How's it going, everybody? C-RadTV back here in our video. So, of course, it's time for another Detroit Lions NFL draft preview. So, in the last draft preview, we wrapped up the offensive side of the draft previews with the top day 3 offensive lineman prospects in the 2022 NFL draft. And in this part, we're going to begin wrapping up the defensive side of the NFL draft previews by taking a look at the top day 3 defensive lineman prospects in rounds 4 through 7 of the draft and see who the Lions should target for the defensive line. Since, of course, we all know the game is truly won and lost in the trenches, so these picks are crucial and essential. See, anyway, we're going to take a look at the top prospects for defensive ends and defensive tackles and see who the Lions should target in the draft. So, yeah, for rounds 4 through 7. But anyway, let's go. So, starting off with defensive ends, the first one we're going to go over here, hailing out of Cincinnati, standing 6'5", weighing 243 pounds, we got Magi Sanders. So, for Magi, for his strengths, he has good bursts out of his stance and gets right offensive tackles around the arc. He fights hard against double teams, won't quit on plays. He bends well at the knees and plays with quality leverage for his size. He's urgent with his hands, has good twitch in his adjustments. His closing speed and pursuit is solid. He's a slick side-to-side mover who's effective on stunts, and his hand usage has plenty of promising flashes. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he's incredibly thin lower half. Overall lack of weight. It's going to scare a lot of NFL teams off. His lack ideal length for a defensive end. He lacks the power to shock blockers when he makes initial contact. His size may lead to some people just to view him as a pass rushing outside linebacker. His range and coverage ability, they aren't ideal to move into a full-time linebacker role. And he has been listed as a player that could disappoint in the NFL because of his rare thin legs and his leg tendency to play close to 240 pounds. There are large issues in the NFL run game. So a lot of issues against the run defense. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to Obon Gwacham of the BC Lions of the CFL. So, a lot of things to like for sure, but there are a lot of things not to like. Almost all the negatives, cancel out all the positives. Incredibly undersized, and not a lot of coverage abilities to go to linebacker. So, too many issues, I'd say pass. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Texas A&M, standing 6'5", weighing 270 pounds, we got Michael Clemons. So for Michael's strengths, his frame is enormous, looms over opponents, has great length, allows him to lock out and control linemen in the run game. He's energetic with his hand usage, bull rush is knockback power, will catch tackles off guard, has good burst and closing speed and pursuit, has experience as a stand-up rusher and could be used situationally as an outside linebacker, has a massive wingspan will make him hard to shake for runners, and has a high motor player that will win in late reps. He's also been listed as one of the top sleeper picks in this draft because he may have some off-field baggage that could worry some teams, but on the field, though, well-built defensive end that fits his role well, and with the right situation and the right staff, could develop into a long-term quality starter. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he struggles to maintain in leverage. In the run game, it weakens his anchor. His lower half doesn't match his upper half in terms of power and strength. And his lack of lateral agility will make it hard for him to run or stunts or work inside counters. His flexibility and bend around the corner won't be adequate against NFL tackles. He's late to shedding the run game and processing has too many lapses. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to Anthony Nelson of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, a lot of upside, a lot of things to like for sure. And you put him around the right coaching staff, you can get the most out of him for sure. So, yeah, definitely someone to keep an eye on. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Penn State, sitting 6'2", weighing 252 pounds. We got Arden Keyte. So for Arnold, he's your prototype tackling defensive end, so he's very good at tackling the ball carrier. In terms of strength, he's a punishing tackler, will overwhelm runners when he makes contact. He's twitchy and explosive and makes adjustments in pursuit. He can generate push with his bull rush, has smart eyes and hands to identify the runner and shed on time. He's a capable stand-up rusher who's comfortable in a two-point stance. He plays the whistle, finds work whenever he can. He has subtle hand counters, which soften the edge against blockers. He has a post and handshake, which could help create opportunities. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he's an inconsistent knee bender that rises his way into leverage issues, so he's got to learn to stay low. His burst is inconsistent from snap to snap, so he needs to work on consistency. He's more of a technical rusher than a dynamite athlete. Lacks the range needed to survive in coverage at the NFL level. He's a stiff player, can't flip his hips, make adjustment in space. Too often he's walled off in the run game due to leverage issues. So again, he's got to stay well and improve that. He's not very laterally quick. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to Dalen Hayes of the Baltimore Ravens. So has a lot of upside, a lot of things to like for sure, but he's got a few things he's got to get better at. Got to stay lower and got to be more consistent on his bursts. But still, if he can get some consistency, definitely someone I would consider for sure. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Houston, standing 6'2", weighing 250 pounds, we got David Anetti. So for David's strengths, he has remarkably long arms, which give him a ton of operational space against offensive tackles. A 5' for his size, will convert speed into power well. He's strong and sturdy run defender, can maintain quality leverage. Plays well enough, Santa his pants can set the edge. He taunts the snap low, gets off the ball at a good rate of speed. His balance through contact is impressive. He builds up his speed nicely in space and can run down plays from behind. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he's an underdeveloped technique as a pass rusher, which leaves him in too many stalemates. Doesn't have enough counters to consistently surprise offensive tackles and keeps them guessing. A consistent finisher as a tackler, so he's got to get more consistent as tackling. He's late to react to the ball carrier coming past him, will miss opportunities as a result, so he's got to get better at that. Not a bending type that can get underneath blockers and sink his way past punches. Lateral quickness is modest. He's not threatening to deal with. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to Azeez Ojulari of the New York Giants, so a lot of things you like for sure. A lot of the violent things you like for sure. A couple things he's got to improve at, but hey, always room for improvement. Definitely, though, someone to keep an eye on for sure. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Minnesota, standing 6'5", weighing 290 pounds. We got Yeezy Ademiwa. It's a bit of a tongue twister name, but anyway, for his strengths, he's a freakishly large with elite length and frame. Consistently locks out as a pass rusher, knows how to use his length. His straight line speed's remarkable for his size. His quality balance, which allows him to keep his feet in awkward positions. His ball rush has serious potential if he can learn to uncork it more under the right people. He's quick enough laterally to run stunts. His hand usage improved throughout the year. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he faces a natural leverage disadvantage. He lacks the flexibility to offset it. He's not a technically nuisance pass rusher. He struggles to pair moves together, create threat for blockers. More of a developmental athlete than a refined football player, so it might take him a couple years for him to unlock his true potential. He allows his base to get narrow. It leads to gridlock. Not the type that can bend around the corner or dip under blocks. His motor's ordinary, and he has below-average bursts out of his stance per defensive end. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to now retired defensive end LeVar Edwards. So, a lot of upside for sure. A lot of great size, but a lot of things that are left to be desired. Might take a couple years for to reach his potential, but maybe someone for like a rotational piece for depth. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Oklahoma, standing 6'5", weighing 265 pounds, we got Isaiah Thomas. So for Isaiah's strengths, he's a big frame defender, looks the part physically. He's smart with his hand usage and times his initial strike well. He's sturdy enough to hold his ground in the run game. He flashes some power in his hands to knock back tackles and win as a bull rusher. His hand usage has good variety. He mixes up a lot. He sets up his moves with good body language and great creativity. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he's not a twitchy pass rusher and lacks the ideal explosiveness to threaten tackles. He projects purely as a 4-3 defensive end. He won't have much positional versatility, so maybe just limited at end. He plays too high, lacks reliable leverage, so he's got to learn to stay low. He slips off way too many tackle attempts, so he's got to improve on tackling. He can't be trusted to bring down stronger, agile QBs, so he might have issues sacking the QB. Not laterally quick or nimble enough to win as a pure finesse rusher, and his habitual dive tackler that leaves his feet way too early. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to Khalid Kareem of the Cincinnati Bengals, so a lot of things to like for sure, but a lot of things that are left to be decided. Like, gotta improve tackling, gotta improve sacking the QB, gotta improve this and that. And he's maybe just limited to a 4-3 defensive end, which is what the Lions are going to this year. It's a 4-3 defensive scheme. So yeah, maybe someone worth taking a risk with if Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn can unlock his potential. Well, maybe. Alright, so the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Coastal Carolina, standing 6'4", weighing 260 pounds, we got Jeffrey Gunter. So for Jeffrey's strengths, he's a well-built defensive end with a prototype build. Creative hands with a long list of moves at his disposal. He knows how to change up his tempo as a pass rusher. His range and coverage is surprising for his size. He can cover a lot of ground in a hurry. His hands aren't overwhelming, but he can do some damage with them against smaller blockers. His first step is always promising when he times the snap properly. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he lacks awareness and gets lost in the shuffle too often. He struggles to make up for errors and lacks adjustability, both as a pass rusher and run defender. Not flexible enough or strong enough to get underneath blockers and turn the corner around the backside of the pocket. His discipline and leverage will get him into trouble, so he's got to be more disciplined. His short area quickness is disappointing. Power doesn't match his body type, and he can struggle to create movements when he engages with a bull rush. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to now retired defensive end Garrett Sickles. So has some things you like for sure. A couple things, though, that he doesn't really have that you want to see in defensive end. Maybe someone for, like, rotational or depth. Possibly. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Texas A&M, standing 6'3", weighing 240 pounds. We got Tyree Johnson. So for Tyree's strengths, he uses his length well, knows how to protect his chest on the way in. He's slippery around the edge, has some natural ability around the arc. His swipe is efficient, does a good job of clearing the way for his body to fall. High motor player that stays active. He's not deterred even when he is getting pushed around. He maximizes leverage ability. Natural leverage advantage with a good knee bend. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he's undersized for a traditional defensive end role. He may need to work as an outside linebacker in the NFL. Too easily he's held up by tight ends, so we saw a lot of his experience come as a stand-up rusher. He lacks the power to drive blockers back, creates movement into the pocket. Lateral agility isn't ideal, won't allow him to work inside moves effectively. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to now retired defensive end Jabril Frazier. So has a lot of upside, a lot of things to like for sure. Very active, will always keep fighting to the end. A lot of things, though, that could hold him back. And maybe just limit to, like, an outside linebacker role, so maybe on the edge. But, yeah, maybe someone for, like, situational downs, like a third down or something like that. And the final defensive end we're going to go over here before we move on to defensive tackles. We got hailing out of Notre Dame, standing 6'2", weighing 265 pounds. We got Myron Toney. And if anyone's wondering, yes, he is the cousin to Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, or as I call Tua turns the ball over. Question is, can Myron turn the ball over in the right ways? Time will tell. Anyway, though, continuing on, though, and staying on topic to his strengths, has a good first step, will allow him to close ground in a hurry. Very active with his approach and constantly changes angles. He has the mass to win in the run game if his angles are smart. He's a high-octane in pursuit. He races his way back into plays, finds chances to get action. He's quick to shoot his hand up and interfere with passing lanes. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he gives up leverage almost immediately. His overall frame and length, they aren't ideal. He's a bit more compact that teams want. He doesn't have room to bulk up significantly without overloading his body, and it will keep him outside. He's not a natural power generator with his lower half. His foot quickness is disappointing. His balance betrays him on a regular basis, and he's unable to bend effectively on outside rushes. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to Curtis Weaver, the Cleveland Browns, so has some things to like for sure, but a lot of things you may not like for sure. So yeah, maybe someone that's like depth or rotational, like he's either going to be a good depth piece, or he'll end up living in his cousin Tua's shadow, which, judging by how Tua's played so far in Miami, that's not much of a shadow to be under. Man, can you believe Lions fans actually wanted the Lions to draft Tua turns the ball over a few years ago? Man, those Lions fans were complete fucking idiots, weren't they? So now, moving on to defensive tackles. The first one we're going to go over here, hailing out of Michigan, standing 6'4", weighing 310 pounds. We got Christopher Hinton. And for anyone wondering, he is the father of Chris Hinton, who was a 5-time All-Pro and the 4th overall pick in the 1983 draft. So yeah, in terms of strengths, though, he's light on his feet relative to his size. He carries his weight well and has an NFL body. He's able to peel off and snag ball carriers even when he's fighting blockers. He's a gang tackler that wants a piece of the pie every time. He's a sturdy tone setter in the run game. Won't get pushed or punished around by single blockers. Bleh. He's versatile enough to move around the line if needed, so he can play anywhere in the D-line. His bull rush and swim moves, they have potential when they're timed properly. In terms of his weaknesses, though, his linear and higher cut build hurts him maintaining leverage. He's more of a straight mover than side to side, which makes his running stunts harder. He's not dynamic with his hands. He's stuck without answers on a regular basis. He's still undergoing a lot of development as a technical pass rusher and may require 2 or 3 more years of seasoning. He's slow to adjust if he starts to lose his balance. In terms of his NFL comparisons, he's been compared to Montravius Adams of the Pittsburgh Steelers, so has a lot of potential, has the things to like for sure, but it may take a couple years, though, for him to really reach his max potential. Maybe someone to keep an eye on 3 to 5 years down the line in the long term, for sure. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Connecticut, standing 6'4", weighing 326 pounds, we got Travis Jones. So for Travis' strengths, he has a powerful upper half, which will allow him to shuck off blocks and knock opponents off angles. His mass and knee bend will flash in the run game when he's asked to sit in a spot. He's capable of taking on double teams. His bull rush is overwhelming for college blockers. He has experience working outside of the nose tackle role, so offers some versatility. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he's slow-footed, struggles to thread laterally, doesn't have the dynamic traits in the passing game. He lacks the discipline with his run defense angles. His closing ability, once he gets penetration, is very poor. He's inconsistent output from snap to snap, so he's got to get more consistent. Too content to let blocks seal him down off from the play. He doesn't seem engaged from snap to whistle. Easily evaded by QBs. Won't be able to make much happen in pursuit and has very low energy. And he could disappoint in the NFL level because even though he did put on a solid showing at the Senior Bowl, he wasn't consistent, though, generating pressure at UConn, but his motor runs way too cold too often, so he's got to get better energy and start playing like he actually gives a shit. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to Eddie Goldman of the Chicago Bears, so a lot of upside for sure, but he's got to play with more, he's got to be more consistent, and he's got to actually play like he gives a damn. Because if he does that shit, if he gets drafted by the Lions and he plays like he doesn't care, he won't last long with Dan Campbell. That's for damn sure. So yeah, maybe someone that could be something that could be keep an eye on if he can get his shit together and actually give a fuck. Maybe. Alright, so the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Florida, standing 6'4", weighing 285 pounds, we got Zachary Carter for silver sack strengths. Has active hands, which helps him stay out of stalemates. Decent quickness out of stance, can move between the defensive tackle and the defensive end roles without much trouble, so there's some versatility right there. His bend has promise when he can reach the outside shoulder blockers. He keeps his lower half running until he breaks through. He can finish from tough angles as a tackler. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he gets overpowered and buried in the turf against double teams, so not good against that. Inconsistent anchor will be liability at the point of attack, so he's got to be more consistent when he's anchoring. He's unable to control angles to redirect the run. Not particularly powerful. His punches are going to jar linemen off their platform. He's not a technically proficient pass rusher. His ordinary motor isn't going to create many effort sacks. His leverage gets messier late in reps. His discipline and awareness, though, will need some work. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to R.J. McIntosh of the Green Bay Packers. So, a lot of upside, a lot of things to like for sure. But he's got to be more consistent overall, but still, maybe someone to keep an eye on for sure. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Stanford, standing 6'3", weighing 310 pounds, we got Thomas Booker. So for Thomas's strength, he carries his 310-pound frame like he's 210 pounds, so that's impressive speed. He has impressive lateral mover, capable of moving around and fitting in different spots. He has active eyes when he searches for the ball. His hands and feet work well in sync. He's slippery through gaps as a pass rusher. He's sufficient finishing strength as a tackler. His knee bend's impressive, helps him to maintain leverage. Phenomenal leg drive that keeps his pass rushes growing even when his hands stall out. In terms of his weaknesses, though, his lower body flexibility and overall bend's lacking. He's not tuned up with his hands and doesn't seem to have a consistent rush plan. His anchoring ability in the run game isn't consistent, and he gets knocked back by double teams way too often. He's a middle of the pack pass rushing twitch. Needs more diversity with his outer body to create openings and soften angles. He struggles to detach from blocks as the ball is passing by in the run game, so he's got to learn to get better at that. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to Kentavious Street of the San Francisco 49ers. So, a lot of upside, a lot of things to like for sure. Great speed and finesse. A couple things he's got to improve on, but still, definitely somebody to keep an eye on for sure. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Iowa State, standing 6'5", weighing 350 pounds. We got Ioma Uwazurike. That whole name is a bit of a fucking tongue twister and a half. So in terms of his strengths, he's very explosive at his stance. He's a versatile lineman that can move around a formation and plug in different spots, so has the versatility. He twitched up in both his hands and feet. His bull rush has some wheels to it. He moves like he's 20-pound lighter than he's listed. His natural length is on display quite regular, and he brings the rundown athleticism in pursuit situations. He's also been listed as one of the top sleeper picks in this draft because of his rare size and length, with the 6'6" height, the 6'5", 6'6" height, the 315 to 320-pound frame. Also measured with 35 and 1/8 of an inch arms for the position. He shows up as a pass rusher, a team that could fall in love with the tools, and definitely has the potential to maybe even move higher than he's ranked in the draft and could go top 100 with his upside. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he's a habitual learner that compromises balance by overextending. He easily knocked off balance in the run game. His rush plan is rudimentary and reckless. He's unable to string his counters together and catch his blockers by surprise. He loses track of the ball, easily washed down the run game. He struggles to shed at point of attack in time to snag the ball carriers. His angles and body control need to be tuned up to handle double teams. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to now retired defensive tackle Adolphus Washington. So has a lot of upside. Like, the upside is phenomenal. Could be a steal, though. Potentially could go top 100. Couple things, though, he's got to clean up and get better at. But still, definitely somebody I would consider for sure. And the Lions have at least 5 picks in the top 100. So if they want to make a minor reach for him, they could if they want. But yeah, maybe someone that could be a steal if he goes outside the top 100. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Kentucky, standing 6'3", weighing 280 pounds. We got Josh Pascal. So for Josh's strength, he has hands stay busy as a pass rusher. He's strong finisher as a tackler. Can be used to set the edge on rundowns. Has powerful hands that can catch blockers off guard. He has the strength of a heavyweight that will be fine matching up against professionals. He sets up his counter with quality body language well. His energy and technique improved throughout the season, so he only continue to get better. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he's a positional tweener. Doesn't fit neatly as a defensive end or defensive tackle. His eye discipline and ball tracking, they are consistent. Too often he gets lost in the shuffle. He's a linear mover, which will have a hard time slipping gaps. Not a naturally twitchy player after his get off. He looks out of control and awkward. His leverage is too easily lost in run game. Pure power winner, doesn't have much finesse. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to the free agent defensive tackle Jason Strowbridge. So, a couple things to like for sure, but a lot of things, man, that just make him a bit questionable. Maybe someone worth taking a gamble with, but maybe someone that's maybe just the best for rotational or depth. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Ohio State, standing 6'1", weighing 298 pounds, we got Haskell Garrett. So for Haskell's strength, his balance is reliable even when he gets pushed in awkward angles. Has very active hands when he tries to contest blocks in the run game. Spin moves easy and immediate. Powerful hitter when he gets a clean shot in the ball carrier. He runs back into place to get a piece of tackles. He's a straight line speed, which is stunning. He will have no problem running down quarterbacks in pursuit. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he is slightly undersized, which can lead to him getting washed out against double teams. He's a poor lateral mover, struggles to slip through gaps, recalculates on short notice, loses angles and eyes too much against the run. It causes issues with shedding on time. He lacks the ideal body control and adjustability for a small defensive tackle, and he tends to turn his back to the play. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to Laryl Marchison of the Tennessee Titans, so a lot of upside for sure, a lot of things to like though, but a couple things that could limit him, but definitely someone to keep an eye on for depth. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Arizona State, standing 6'3", weighing 325 pounds, we got DJ Davidson. So for DJ's strength, he has a wide frame with a good core, immovable object in the center defense, natural fit as a nose tackle. Strong in both his upper and lower body, can simply overwhelm most centers. He takes on double teams very effectively. Length is adequate, has some pop at the end of his punch, will surprise opponents when he lands a clean stab move. He revved up in pursuit even if he can't always get there. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he tends to rise too quickly and can't recover his leverage once he starts to lose it, so he's got to learn to stay low. He carries some extra meat on the bone, may lead to stamina issues as a pro, so he's got to improve his stamina and conditioning. And, yeah, endurance. I mean, he's not the type of athlete who will be able to play all 3 downs in the NFL, so he may be like a situational down player, and he's stiff in his lower half. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to Ted Darrell Sladen of the Green Bay Packers, so a lot of upside for sure, a lot of things to like for sure, but could only be maybe limited, so maybe could be used as somebody like a situational defensive tackle, maybe. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of LSU, standing 6'4", weighing 338 pounds, we got Neal Farrel Jr. So for Neal's strength, he's a peppy, popping out of his stance, surprising twitch around his body considering his hefty frame. He's an aggressive tackler, will throw his body around to make contact. His bull rush is potent when he gets his leg drive and leverage working together. He could constantly change his angles and tries to create openings as a pass rusher. He's a very energetic big man, won't leave energy in the tank, so he'll give everything he's got every play. His passing game upside will help provide some scheme versatility for him. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he had his arm length was measured at a modest 31 5/8 of an inch, which will limit his ability to lock out and control blockers. He might be playing too heavy at the moment, and he carries some serious excess weight in his torso, so he may have to shed a little bit of weight. And his arms looks like they are coated in grease when he tries to wrap up tackles. He constantly slips and whiffs when he gets the chance to finish. His leverage fluctuates constantly from snap to snap, so he's got to learn to stay low and get better at it. And whenever it does, and that fluctuating, it has led to some very horrible moments on tape. So in terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to Bravion Roy of the Carolina Panthers. So a lot of things to like for sure, but he's got to be better at leverage and get low. But yeah, if he can improve that leverage, then this is someone I would keep an eye on for sure. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Wisconsin, standing 6'3", weighing 295 pounds, we got Matt Henningson. So for Matt's strengths, he uses his length effectively to lock out blocks, creates opportunity to separate. He pushes the pace with his leg drive and forces linemen to work overtime to anchor down. His natural power generator can collapse the pocket effectively. He's a strong finisher that has the upper body strength to bring down runners without trouble. He's still learning to maximize his power, but his push-pull moves has a ton of potential to it. But with him learning to maximize his power, but there's more potential and he could only get better with it. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he has mild bursts, which makes him easy to read on the way in for blockers. His combination encounters are underdeveloped, and his rush pattern is a bit too predictable. And his framework's maxed out at around 295 pounds. Nothing out of the ordinary for an NFL lineman, but below average balance and body control. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to Joe Gassino of the Los Angeles Chargers. So, a lot of upside for sure, a lot of things to like for sure, and could maybe reach his potential in a couple years. Couple of things, so he's got to clean up, though, but still, someone definitely to keep an eye on for maybe a couple years down the line. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Alabama, standing 6'4", weighing 283 pounds, we got LeBron Ray. So for LeBron's strengths, he has a moldable frame that could fit as either a defensive end or defensive tackle, depending on how the team wants to utilize him on the line. So he has versatility and can play anywhere on the D-line. He knows how to maximize his length as a pass rusher. Active hands won't stop working until he breaks through, and he tracks the ball well throughout the mess. In terms of his weaknesses, though, he did deal with an elbow injury in 2021 that led to him wearing a brace and needing surgery after the season ended, so that could be a red flag. Could he stay healthy? Can he get back to what he was before that injury? Other than that, though, doesn't have the bend and body control to create angles and tilt around the corner when he works as an outside rusher. Leans at the waist and struggles to stay leveraged without putting his balance at risk. In terms of NFL comparison, he's been compared to Malik Herring of the Kansas City Chiefs. So yeah, has a lot of upside, a lot of things to like for sure, a lot of versatility, but can he stay healthy? Can he get back to what he was before that elbow injury? Maybe someone to take a gamble on for depth. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Louisiana, standing 6'5", weighing 350 pounds. We got Taiwan Humphrey, who also goes under the nickname Big Saucy. So anyway, for Taiwan's strengths, he's an enormous nose tackle with gravitational pull in the middle of the defense. Actively level is shocking for his size. He regularly searches for ways to counter with his hands or create new angles as a pass rusher. He's physically overwhelming the smaller centers, doesn't get moved out of his spot, makes a ton of power in close quarters, can blast back blockers with it. And he's also been listed as one of them small school studs, though, because even though his massive stature and sturdy run defense won't be valuable for more than a fraction of snaps in each game, he could turn into a solid contributor, though, at nose tackle. And in terms of his weaknesses, though, he has naturally high leverage plus stiffness in the lower half, which will make it too easy for him to stand out, so he's got to learn to find a way to stay low. His hefty build will make working laterally or getting the plays outside of his perimeter incredibly difficult. He loses some of his steam as the game drags on, will need to be on a snap count to stay out of low power mode. Slow twitch athlete will have a harder time dealing with quicker opponents. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to now retired defensive tackle Josh Augusta. So has a lot of upside, a lot of things to like for sure, especially his big frame. But he's got to learn to stay low. And with his, condition, he might be limited to just a few situation snaps. So maybe someone to use as like a situational, rotational guy, like maybe like someone like on a 3rd and short with how good he is against the run. Definitely could be a run stuffer for sure. So the next player we're going to go over here, hailing out of Kentucky, standing 6'3", weighing 350 pounds, we got Marquan McCall. So for Marquan's strengths, he gets out of his stance with surprising ease relative to his size. He works hard for a big man, will chase down plays from behind. He has natural drive back power when it comes with the territory being enormous. He moved outside the nose tackle spot on the occasion for Kentucky, so he could go defensive tackle. He could have some rotational versatility value on the D-line. His weaknesses, though, he was listed as 379 pounds on the 2021 roster, and he struggled to keep his weight under control because for the draft he's listed at 350, so he's lost almost 30 pounds since last September. His balance is poor. He gets cut down too easily when he tries to work laterally. He plays too high, constantly bends at his waist. His leverage issue takes away too much of his control. Awareness and overall instincts to react in the run game are below average. He lacks discipline with his angles. Limited nuisance as a pass rusher that stalls him out. And his hands aren't used with precision. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to free agent defensive tackle Devonta Lampkin. So has some upside, a lot of things to like for sure. Very quick out of his stance. A couple things though he's gonna have to learn to get better at. But yeah, maybe someone be used as a rotational defensive tackle for a couple snaps while a couple of the other lines, big name guys, get some rest. But yeah, definitely for depth for sure. And the final defensive tackle, the final defensive lineman, the final player we're going to go over in this video, we have hailing out of Nebraska, standing 6'2", weighing 321 pounds. We got Damien Daniels, who is the younger brother of former San Francisco 49ers defensive tackle Darrion Daniels. So Damien has great natural leverage, which helps him to drop it to the ground and play the role of fire hydrant. He switches to top gear as soon as he gets a straight line opening to chase the ball. His energy and hustle to pursue plays is present. He can take on a double team and hold his ground as long as his hips don't get turned. He plays hard, stays engaged when he gets shut down. Even when he gets shut down, he has excellent length relative to his height. In terms of his weaknesses, though, his feel and flow as a pass rusher is not yet fully developed yet. He's not instinctual. Movements are too programmed. He tends to load up on single moves rather than work fluidly into the rush. Too easily he's knocked off balance when he has to take on blocks from different angles. He struggles to rip through the hands of blockers with adequate violence. Doesn't have any standout traits that he can lean on in the pass game. Loses track of the ball, gets lost in a shuffle too often. Accuracy and finishing ability as a tackle falls short of expectations. He needs to be completely clear from blocks to impact the ball carrier, so he can't be blocked, and if he's going to have a shot at getting the runner. In terms of his NFL comparison, he's been compared to free agent defensive tackle John Atkins, so has a lot of upside for sure, a lot of things to like for sure, but a couple things though he's got to clean up and get better at. But he has been tagged as a potential up-and-coming prospect by a few different scouting draft experts, so maybe someone to keep an eye on for depth and maybe a couple years down the line, but yeah, maybe someone as a rotational piece for sure. But yeah, anyway, that'll wrap it up here for this Detroit Lions NFL draft preview. So yeah, there's a lot of different defensive linemen for the Lions to consider looking at in the draft. A lot of good pass rushers in this draft. A lot of good run stuffers in this draft too, Can't go wrong with any of these players for sure. So yeah, there are definitely some interesting prospects to keep an eye on for sure. So yeah, that also wraps it up for the defensive line draft previews and all the lineman previews. So we covered the trenches for the draft this year. So now we only got 2 more draft previews, which is the linebackers and then the defensive backs and safeties / secondary players. And those previews are going to be done next week, so I'll have the draft previews done by next week. But yeah, anyway, that'll wrap it up here. If anyone's wondering, yes, I will be watching the Michigan Panthers' first ever game in the USFL this weekend. And yes, I will be doing reviews for the Michigan Panthers games this year. For however long the league ends up staying around for, unless it inevitably disbands again. Just like every other league that's tried to challenge the NFL. But yeah, anyway, that'll wrap it up here. That's all I gotta say. Hope everyone has a great day, and I'll see you on whatever I make next. Peace.